Kindling the Flame. Days turned into weeks, and weeks stretched into months as Pedro endured the brutal elements, with no refuge from the unrelenting sun or the fierce storms. His survival depended on the occasional turtles that washed ashore and the rainwater that collected in their empty shells during the downpours. As the months dragged on, Pedro tirelessly searched for a method to create fire, knowing that fire would not only provide a means to cook his food, but also offer a signal to any passing ships for help. Surrounded by strands of seaweed driftwood and the remnants of shipwrecks, the island seemed to offer plenty of fuel, but without flint, it was all useless. His knife could serve as steel, but finding the right stone was the real challenge. The island, little more than a barren sandbar, was harsh and unforgiving. Undeterred, Pedro searched daily, scouring every inch of the island for something capable of creating a spark, yet all his efforts proved in vain. There was no flint to be found. Resolute, Pedro turned to the sea. An experienced diver, he explored the ocean floor, hoping to discover something resembling flint. After countless dives, he finally came across two stones that seemed to have the right look and texture. With renewed hope, he brought them to shore and ground them together until a sharp edge appeared. He had already accumulated a pile of dry seaweed, and now, armed with his makeshift flint and steel, he struck the stones against his knife. After several attempts, a spark finally flew, igniting the tinder. The fire crackled to life, its warmth and light a small triumph over the unrelenting isolation. For the first time in months, Pedro enjoyed a hot meal, a simple pleasure that reignited his sense of hope and purpose. The Tale of Pedro Serrano. The details of Pedro Serrano's early life remain shrouded in mystery, primarily due to the age of the story and the scarcity of factual information. What is known, however, is that around the middle of the 6th century, Pedro, a Spanish sailor, embarked on a voyage as a crew member aboard a merchant ship, crossing the Atlantic Ocean to the New World. What began as a typical journey soon turned into a nightmare for Pedro. One fateful night, a fierce storm ravaged the ship, destroying it completely. Tragically, everyone on board perished, with the sole exception of Pedro. A strong swimmer, Pedro managed to survive and swim to a small, desolate island off the northeastern coast of South America, far from any known shipping routes. While the exact location of this island remains uncertain, it is widely speculated that Pedro was shipwrecked on a sandbar in the Caribbean Sea, known as Sarah Bank, a small, sandy atoll. When Pedro awoke the following morning, the grim reality of his situation became apparent. The island was barren, with no vegetation beyond some sparse grass and a few trees. The most devastating discovery was the absence of fresh water, significantly lowering his chances of survival. Pedro quickly began to search the island and the nearby coral reef for sources of food. He found a small group of shellfish, which he was forced to eat raw. While this provided temporary sustenance, he knew that for any hope of surviving in the long run on the barren island, he would need a more reliable food source. Fortunately, while exploring a shallow lagoon one day, Pedro spotted turtles swimming near the shore. He recognized the opportunity. They would come ashore at night to lay their eggs. As dusk fell, Pedro concealed himself behind a rocky outcrop, waiting silently. Hours passed in tense anticipation as the darkness deepened around him. Finally, the turtles began to emerge from the water, laboriously making their way onto the beach. Seizing the moment, Pedro used his knife, a valuable tool he had managed to keep after the shipwreck, to catch and kill several of the turtles. Their meat became a crucial food source, and their shells served as makeshift containers for collecting rainwater, a rare yet vital resource that would help sustain him in his struggle for survival. The isolated survivor. 3 years passed on the island, and during this time, Pedro's clothing disintegrated, and his hair and beard grew long and untamed. His body slowly adapted to the harsh conditions, developing a thick layer of coarse hair that helped shield him from the elements. He often spotted ships passing by in the distance, but his signals went unseen. The isolation weighed heavily on him, and one can only imagine the crushing loneliness he endured. Each day blurred into an endless cycle of fleeting hope when spotting a distant ship on the horizon, followed by the despair of watching it sail past without noticing him. One fateful morning, Pedro was roused from his sleep. Squinting through the haze of his campfire, what he saw nearly stopped him in his tracks, a human face peering back at him through the smoke. The man, like Pedro, was Spanish. He had been shipwrecked the previous night and survived by clinging to a piece of driftwood until he reached the island. As the stranger approached, both men were gripped by fear. The newcomer was unsettled by Pedro's disheveled and primitive appearance, while Pedro, wild from years of isolation, was shocked to see another person and feared he might be hallucinating. In their shared fear, both men turned and ran, each assuming the other was some sort of devilish trick. In his panic, Pedro cried out to the heavens, seeking protection from the apparition. Hearing Pedro's desperate cries, the other man stopped, recognizing the language and the urgency in Pedro's voice. "Brother," he shouted, "don't run away from me. I'm a Christian, just as I believe you must be." This mutual recognition of their humanity brought the two men together, and they began to settle into a new routine. They split daily chores, keeping the fire going, gathering seaweed, fishing, and collecting driftwood. With the combined strength of two men, they were able to overturn and capture larger turtles, ensuring a more consistent food supply. As the years dragged on, 4 in total, the two men often watched ships pass on the distant horizon, their hearts sinking each time their smoke signals went unnoticed. But then one day, a vessel ventured closer than any before. The men scrambled to build their signal fire, and this time they were finally seen. A small boat detached from the ship and headed toward the island. Overcome with excitement and desperation, Pedro and his companion raced across the beach to meet their rescuers. The sight of 2 ragged, wild figures charging toward them caused the sailors to freeze in fear, thinking they had encountered something monstrous. But Pedro and his companion shouted in Spanish, trying to reassure them. Eventually, the sailors realized that these were not wild men, but fellow Spaniards who had endured years of isolation. Pedro and his companion were taken aboard the ship, which was bound for Spain. On board, Pedro recounted his miraculous survival for 7 years on a desolate, barren atoll. Unfortunately, the years of hardship had taken a toll on his companion, who did not survive the journey home. Once again alone, Pedro carried the weight of their shared ordeal, haunted by the memories of their struggle for survival. Upon his return to Spain sometime after 1550, Pedro was reunited with his family, who had long believed him to be lost at sea. He would continue to tell his extraordinary tale of survival for the rest of his life, a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Pedro Serrano's story remains a chilling reminder of the fragile line between life and death, and the extraordinary lengths a person can go to in order to survive. Preserved in the royal commentaries of Peru by Garcilaso de la Vega, his tale stands as a powerful testament to human endurance and the will to live, even against insurmountable odds. Thank you for joining us on another journey into the depths of human endurance. If you were moved by this story, be sure to subscribe for more true tales of survival and adventure. Until next time, stay safe.